What is up, YouTube? How you doing today? It is me, Just Rob Tech, back from my holiday. I had a lovely time celebrating my birthday. It was really good. Got some new gifts. Obviously, I got God of War Ragnarok. Looking forward to playing that, as well as the Dead Space remaster. But today's video is basically on my PC. Basically, like the last time you saw me do a video, I did obviously got me first ever PC. The one I built originally back in 2012. That then went to my sister. She's now upgraded, so it's come back to me, and obviously most of it is going to be going to the skip. I am going to be salvaging the graphics card to maybe benchmark it and then probably donate it to maybe my nephew's PC if I get around to building him one. But I thought I'd do this video today to I've had this PC for since 2021. It houses a Ryzen 7 5800X, which I originally paid, I looked at the price of it today, was £423.99 back in 2021. This CPU is now going for about just under £180, so that's a considerable amount of difference in price in the last two and a half years. Obviously now we're on to DDR5, but back then this was DDR4. I've got 64 gigabytes of storage of the stuff, running at 36 mega 100 transfers. Can't remember what the cache latency is in it, but I don't think I really paid attention to that at the time. But yeah, pretty fast. It's housing my RX6800, which I do remember paying over £700 for this about a year and a half ago now. It was literally when the graphics cards were coming back in after all the crypto booming was going on, and it's probably the most expensive graphic card I've ever bought. So the fact that now it's going for about £450 for a considerable difference in price to what I paid for it. But I will say it has been a absolute diamond of a card. Absolutely amazing. Really, really good performance at 4K. Great performance at 1080p, 1440p. And obviously this would play 1080p and no problem. But I thought what we'd do today, since I've had this for since 2021, we're now in 2023. I figured what I'd do is I'd do some benchmarking with it. I'd let you know I'd show you what the gaming performance is going to be like if you decided to go out and purchase a similar gaming PC or build your own. I know we're on, obviously, Intel. We're getting ready for the 14th gen Raptor Lake refreshes. AMD are on, obviously, AM5 with the Ryzen 7000 series. But this video is basically to show you that there is still life in the old dog yet, and I figured it's a good time because basically, although this is what you probably class as a dead platform, the fact that you can get a 8-core 16-thread CPU for under £200, and then you combine that with like a pretty decent budget B550 board. Obviously, DDR4 RAM is going very affordable. Combine that with a really affordable M.2 SSD. You can get like a 2 terabyte one for under £80–90 these days. So basically, this is just to show you what sort of performance you can get for that. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. Right, so starting with the CPU motherboard is running the latest BIOS. I believe that is BIOS 4501. So we're running the latest BIOS, and we're also running the latest AMD drivers for the 6800. So we're all good to go on that. Starting off with our synthetic benchmark, so we're just using the CPU-Z inbuilt benchmarking tool. Comparing this to my previous CPU, which was the Ryzen 1700X. Now, this is a pretty decent benchmarking tool to make sure your CPU is running pretty decently. It's free, it's small to download, and it's pretty decent just to obviously make sure your clock speeds are right, especially if, like, comparing it to the quoted speeds of the CPU. So obviously I've got mine overclocked using Precision Boost Overdrive. So mine is running obviously over the default speeds of the CPU. Running pretty cool using my EK AIO. So yeah, that's CPU-Z. We're going to move on to some other benchmarks now. Unigen is also a really good way of benchmarking. I'm currently using the Heaven benchmark, which has been out for a long time. They're now on to Superposition now, but obviously you've got Heaven, you've got obviously Superposition. This is a good way to test out both the graphics card and CPU, as it'll utilize all of them. Obviously, once you've finished the benchmark, it'll give you a real decent score at the end, which we'll come back to when it's done. As you can see by the graph, our maximum boost clock on the GPU will be about 2,321. The temperature is obviously 53. It's cooking really good. It's running really nice actually. I really have been impressed with the cooling potential of this card. Obviously our CPU is about just under 4 gigahertz. Sorry, but yeah, that's Haven. A Unigen benchmark, really good way to test, obviously for overclocks or just to test if your card's running well. We got a CPU score of 172. Obviously our maximum was 397, and obviously our minimum was 40 FPS. So this was using the extreme preset at 1080p. This used to be a very hard benchmark to run, so the fact that most GPUs can absolutely destroy this these days, especially with 1080p, 8 times AAA, tessellation extreme, quality is ultra. So that was Haven. We're going to move on to the next one now. Ending our synthetic benchmarks with some Firestrike Ultra or Firestrike Extreme. I think this is a DX11 benchmarking tool. I think you have to pay for this, but usually they do have on Steam on sale a lot. We're using pretty much 100% of the graphics card in this, so this is a really good tool for benchmarking your GPU basically. So this mainly uses the GPU for benchmarking. Obviously the CPU is used for some of it, but most of it is through the GPU. Obviously the memory being used on the GPU is just over 6 gigabytes of data, and obviously our system memory is getting a good run through as well. Obviously we've got 64 gigs of RAM, so we're gonna be fine. But obviously this used to be a very hard benchmark to run. So even at 1440p, which I'm using now, obviously the most modern one is Time Spy, but obviously I still use Firestrike because I've always liked it. I think it's a cool looking benchmarking tool. Just waiting for the next one to load up. I'll say this is definitely one of my favourite benchmarking tools. I think the world looks cool, and I think that if it finally finishes with like a physics test to proper stress out your GPU, so we'll go to that, and that'll be the end of our system benchmark. Yeah, and you can see we were ending it with a physics test, so cramming the screen with as much as possible, stressing your GPU out. I love it. And then ending with all those tests being put together. So this is the bit that will proper stress out your PC, but the GPU is holding strong. And yeah, I ain't gonna lie, I always root for the guy in the red. And then once you've done all that, you basically get your score. So our graphics score for that run at 1440p was 20,403. Our physics score was 27,189, and the combined score was 9,353. So yeah, pretty happy with that result. Obviously, there's no end here as much as what most people have got, especially the ones running 4090s, probably like double that result. That was the synthetic benchmarks. Obviously, a lot of these are completely free other than 3D Mark, but I'll stick the ones that are free in the description of the video. If ever you want to basically test out your GPU to make sure it's running to the exact speed it's supposed to be, or compared to how other people's cards are running, if you've got like one that's not really hitting the frequencies that some other people are hitting with the exact same card, you can use these benchmarks to test it, especially with CPUs and all the other jazz. You can also get benchmarks for like hard disk drives, and yeah, so basically it's a good way to test out your PC, especially if, like, you know, if you get into overclocking, and, you know, it's a really good way of testing out stability to make sure you've got a decent card. Sometimes you can hit or miss with the silicone lottery. This one, the 5800X, I think it's pretty decent. I've never really been able to push it too much, but I just let Precision Boost Overdrive do all that and let it run. But on to the gaming benchmarks now, and this will be the one that everybody likes to see. But this is what I'll be running. I'm basically going to be doing, I'll probably do 1080p, 1440p, and 4K, just, you know, because some people play at that resolution. I do. I'm using my my LG TV, so I run at 4K for most of my gaming, and obviously, yeah. But 1440p and 1080p are probably the main ones this will be for. So let's get on to it. Even at 1080p, we are running everything flat out at the highest preset. No ray tracing, no FSR. This is pure rasterization performance. At 1080p, we're going to be getting a consistent 120 plus FPS. But obviously we can do better by obviously lowering the settings or enabling FSR. But obviously, to be honest, at 1080p, you know, we're hitting over 100 FPS. I'm quite happy with that. But obviously, once you get to 1440p and 4K, then you're going to be in some real trouble then, as you'll see on the next slide. Turning things up to 1440p with pure rasterization performance, no FSR, everything's set to as far as it can go, no ray tracing at all. We're getting a consistent over 60 FPS experience, but obviously you can improve that with SFR, or if you're using an NVIDIA card, you can use DLSS to improve the frames. But I'm quite happy. I'd be quite happy to play this at you know, over 60 FPS using 1440p, and the GPU is getting a decent workout, not really getting much of a bottleneck, which is good. But obviously, if you wanted to maximize as much performance as possible, you could either change the settings just to high or enable FSR, and I think set to high you probably get a decent run of over 100 FPS with this card. And I can literally show a little quick slide, just me doing that now for you, just to show how much you get with this card. I think this is where we'll completely come unstuck. I think even with FSR, I don't think we'll be able to run this Ultra, because I think Ultra by default has some of the ray tracing features, so this is where we're going to get completely destroyed. So here's Cyberpunk Ultra 4K FSR balanced with ray tracing, running at just under 50 FPS. What I will do after this run is I will turn the ray tracing off, set it to high, just to see what it runs like with some FSR to help. But to be honest, running pretty decently. I mean, it does look quite choppy at the moment, so we are definitely pushing the GPU as much as possible. But I think the one thing that's the 6000 series of AMD cards were definitely not made for ray tracing. I think the 7000s have definitely improved, but yeah, this is pushing the GPU quite high. But yeah, that's 4K with ray tracing and FSR, so we'll turn down to high just to see what that runs like. I think that will give us a lot more consistent frame rate. Oh, so ray tracing wasn't even enabled. and that still pushed the GPU to absolute limits. Right, custom, ultra. Turn ray tracing on. We won't have the path tracing that will not run at all. Right, so quality. Right, let's push this thing to the max. This is where the card's going to get absolutely destroyed, I know it. Oh, yeah, look at that. 20 FPS. Yeah, that's clearly not the settings we want. So this is 4K high settings. This is just using the default high preset of 4K. And that's already given us much better performance. Obviously, this is definitely not a ray tracing card. To be honest, I've never really been into ray tracing. I just find it gives you a very, very big performance hit for, to be honest, not much benefit, but obviously a lot of people like it. So leaving the bar, we're now up to, we did touch 70 FPS, which I'm happy with. So this is high settings 4K. I mean, like our Ryzen 5800X is pushing 70 degrees at the moment, so it's literally screaming at the moment. But our GPU is basically borderline 100% usage, which is fine to me. This game does push very, very high frame rates. I think the benchmark is a lot different to the actual game. I think the game probably runs a little bit smoother, but the benchmark is a very good tool to push your components with, I find. I'm happy with that. 60 FPS. Obviously, you probably could swap down to medium just to make it a bit more smoother, but that is Cyberpunk at 4K. Days Gone at 4K, we're averaging about 90 FPS at the high setting. I'll say a very optimized game. No, like, there's no DLS or FSR in this game by the looks of it, but I think it runs pretty well. Obviously, probably could improve this, turning down some of the settings, but I find the high settings pretty good. Game looks pretty decent. I do need to get back into playing this because I did like from some of the stuff I did see of this game. Obviously, got that sort of Walking Dead, Sons of Anarchy sort of feel to it. I think the one thing I don't like on this game is the motion blur. That's the only thing I really don't like about this game. Far Cry 5 is our next game up. This is running at the maximum ultra spec 4K. At the moment, we're averaging about 89 FPS. Obviously, this is an older title now. There was no DLSS or FSR in place when this game comes out. Still looks really good. Obviously, max settings at 4K, we're getting over 100 FPS. Obviously, you could eliminate some of that and turn it down to high, getting a more stable frame rate. But to be honest, I take 73 minimums at 4K with this game. Obviously, a very good looking game. Obviously, all the Far Cry games usually are. Obviously, I know they've got Far Cry 6 out, so I might have to invest in that. It's a bit more of an up-to-date test for my gaming PC. But obviously, this is Far Cry 5 running at 4K ultra specs. And we got some pretty decent performance there. Obviously, the maximum we went to was 102. As we can see, turning things down to just the high setting, we're already averaging basically what we got as our maximum the last time we benchmarked it at ultra. To be honest, most of the time I play games at high anyway. I haven't had a single problem turning things down to medium or high just to get some more stable frame rate, especially with games like Cyberpunk, which is probably still going to be a very demanding game for the next few years. But our maximum has, well, it's not really increased that much compared to Ultra, so I probably would still play this game at Ultra spec rather than knock down to high. But to be honest, it's still a very demanding game at 4K. And obviously, because this game came out way before the inventions of DLSS and FSR, we've got none of that to improve our performance. Our first of the modern titles now, so we're running Wild Hearts. Now this is running the 4K standard mode. We seem to have highest, standard, low and lowest as presets, so I've just gone with the standard. I'm guessing that's their version of high. We are running FSR quality mode. I think this game does still need a bit of work. I mean, the motion blur is a bit all over the place. Our frame rates are spiking. But this is the game running at 4K. We probably could swap down to 1440p with this title, just because it's a bit inconsistent. Obviously, we're not even really doing anything, and the frames are spiking all over the place. But with this mode, you do seem to be able to hit over 60 FPS, but obviously there's a lot of vegetation. Vegetation, I mean. We could literally turn down the settings. Graphic settings. Preset, highest, standard. Let's see what happens there. Does that improve? Yeah, that's a lot more smoother. So I thought we were on the standard setting already, but we seem to be on the highest. And obviously, if they've turned that down to low, it should improve the performance. Yeah, 60. Well, still 60 FPS. Oh no, it hit 70. That's fine. Yeah, Wild Hearts, still quite a demanding game. I think that's more of a case of optimization. I mean, good grief. Good job I got this cheap. Finishing off our benchmarks, we are running Ashes of Singularity, or Ashes of the Benchmark as it's called, as most people do seem to get this to benchmark their GPU. There's a lot going on. This is on the crazy setting at 4K. The game is looking pretty damn good. Obviously, this is like an RTS game, so think like Command & Conquer on sort of steroids. I've always liked this. I think it's one of my favourite benchmarks ever, to be honest. But yeah, this is the crazy setting with a DX12 mode. So this is basically the latest version of it. So you're getting all of the bells and whistles with this benchmark. I just love running this just to watch all the carnage unfold. And obviously it's a good test to, even though it's running DX12, you can kind of still see that sometimes the GPU is not being fully utilized. So this is a real good benchmark, I find, to test for like bottlenecks. But yeah, there's like loads going on. It's like a big giant intergalactic war. What's not like to like? Obviously, you probably wouldn't want to play the crazy setting unless you had like a much stronger GPU at 4K. I got some points for something. I didn't do anything. I just watched the benchmark. Yeah, this is Ashes of the Singularity, running at 4K DX12 crazy mode. And that's the last of our benchmarks. Right, folks, thank you very much for watching. That was one of my first benchmarking videos I've done. The reason I've decided to do it is because there's a couple of games upcoming that I want to test out on this system before I do make the upgrade, which I'm planning to do in autumn time. Currently, the games on my hit list is Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. Obviously, I did that video on my gaming channel, which I'll stick in the description. Yeah, I need some more people to check that out, you know what I mean? That's one of the games I'm looking forward to. Originally, I was going to get on the PS5, but quite honestly, I think the idea of playing on the PC much better graphics, much better mod support, no doubt, and obviously there'd be a lot more opportunity to do some captures of it. So I'm going to get it on the PC. It'd be cheaper as well, let's be honest. And Starfield. Now, Starfield is the one that I'm kind of really looking forward to, but it's kind of the one I'm kind of worried about, if you know what I mean. I do expect it to run on this system before I need to upgrade. I think the GPU I'm still sorted through for quite a while. I don't really need to upgrade the RX6800 yet, I don't think, for 4K. I could always just run it at 1440p, that's not a problem. But the rest of the system, I think, is starting to show its age, especially at 4K. I mean, you can now pick up the Ryzen 5800X for about under £180 at Amazon, compared to how much I spent on it when I first came out, 430 quid. The banes of being a beta tester and being, you know, wanting to get something the latest and greatest. Now the fact you can get it under £180, what? You know, bloody hell. I know it's like the platform's not going to be updated anymore. We're now on to Ryzen 7000 series. AM5 is going to be supported for the next 4 or 5 years. So, but the fact that I still think an 8-core, 16-threaded CPU for under £180 is nothing to sniff at all. So that's going to be the big test, looking for those two games. I've recently got Baldur's Gate 3. That does run well at 4K. I can play that sort of medium-high settings and average over 120 FPS. So that's not really too much of a... I say that's a game you don't really need sky-high frame rates for, but obviously, as you saw with Cyberpunk, that game can push a lot of GPUs, and yeah, that's a game I've had to turn some settings down to get it for a decent smooth frame rate. But I kind of do think that for 4K gaming, I think I do need a platform change. Whether that is with Ryzen AM5 or Intel, not really sure on that. There's a lot of pros and cons to both platforms. Obviously, Ryzen is going to be supported until Ryzen 9000 series before they probably do a platform change. Intel's got obviously its 13th gen, 14th gen possibly coming out by the end of the year, but then that'll be it then for Raptor Lake, or 14th. Obviously 14th gen is going to be the last socket for Intel. I think it's LMA 1700. That's going to be the last one, which is not a bad thing. I mean, like the 12 series is still running really good. Obviously the 13th series is very good. Now the problem I've got is if I go Ryzen, I've seen I can get the 7700X for under £300. And I've obviously seen that I can get the i7 for under 400, which, you know, whether I go with, I don't think I'll go 13th gen. I'll probably, if I was going to go Raptor Lake, I probably would go 14th gen. I'm guessing that 14th gen's i7 is probably going to come out at £450, because we usually get skanked over in the UK compared to the rest of the world. It is what it is. Motherboards, though, I mean, for the motherboard that I would want, obviously, because the motherboard I've got in here is a Asus Strix Dark Hero 8, which I do believe I spent over £400 on this. I've never really been one for getting budget level motherboards. I've always wanted to get a decent spec one. So I would either be looking at, say, for instance, the MSI X670E Carbon Wi-Fi is most places is about £450. But yeah, the Intel Z790 DDR5 version, I've had a look online, and that seems to be going for £350. But yeah, an i7 is more than a Ryzen 7700X. So you kind of getting skanked either way. yeah, so I've got a lot of choices to make, whether I go Intel or AMD. I kind of like the fact that I've got a lot of choice. It used to be basically, if you wanted something decent and affordable, you go AMD. And if you wanted something that's like high-end, but it's going to last you a fair few years, you go Intel. So the fact that we now got to the point where we can do pros and cons of both and make a decent decision to go either way is pretty good. But anyway, so this is my first sort of benchmarking video, folks. If you want to see more of these, let me know in the comments. Leave your thoughts and feedback. I am going to be doing benchmarks with Armored Core 6 when it comes out, and also Starfield. I probably will do a full 1080p for 1440p and 4K performance differentiation for both games. But yeah, this is my first benchmarking view. If you like what you see, drop a like. If you want to see more, leave your thoughts and feedbacks in the comments. Subscribe, it costs nothing. And yeah, just Rob Tech out. Thanks for watching, folks. See you again next time. Bye.